Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. I'm your host, Kiera Dent, and I had this crazy idea that maybe I could combine a doctor and a team member's perspective because let's face it, dentistry can be a challenging profession with those two perspectives. I've been a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, regional manager, practice owner, and I have a team of traveling consultants where we have traveled to over 165 different offices coaching teams. Yep, we don't just understand you, we are you. Our mission is to positively impact the world of dental, and I believe that this podcast is the greatest way I can help elevate teams, grow VIP experiences, reduce stress, and create A-teams. Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. Hello, Dental Team listeners. This is Kiera, and you guys, today is car casting day. It's been a long time since I've done car casting, and no, these ones don't get made into video, guys. I actually do a reasonable job trying to stay safe on the road while car casting. And it is kind of funny to think about how ridiculous I'm sure I look while I drive. I'm going through a parking lot. In one ear, I've got the podcast headphones so I can hear how the recording's going. In the second ear, I have Maps going. Are you a Google or an Apple Maps? I definitely go off of Apple Maps, guys. I know Google Maps are better. I know it. But at the same time, I've used Apple Maps for so long that when I go on Google, I look like an idiot and I don't know what I'm even doing. So that's how I look when I'm here. So you guys can just get on the road with me. You can be a part of this. I am driving in upstate New York. I just finished with an awesome office. I don't know what I've done to myself this year, but the snow just keeps following me. They said they had not had much snow up here this year, and lo and behold, it is snow and beauty. And I think honestly, one of my favorite things about my job and what I get to do with Dental Team is I actually get to travel to offices and go physically see you in your practices. So I've been actually traveling to these offices for, I think the last 4 or 5 years. And so to see these teams evolve is pretty magical. I think oftentimes when we're in the thick of our own offices, we can't really see the growth, but seeing these offices every 3 months for the last 4 years has been pretty incredible. And so just wrapping up some new quarterly rocks based on the traction model, and also we've been adding in Patrick Lenciani's model. It's really fun to watch these offices. What I would say that I've seen over the course of the last couple of years is I see offices who actually now are taking on ownership and accountability, offices who are educated, where they know about practice profitability and what it means to be profitable and why we need it to be profitable, and being able to teach offices that, you know, you've got to pay for all your expenses and then you need at least 20% profit. And then what comes out of that profit doesn't mean doctors are off on yachts and on vacation. Taxes come out of that, and having money to pay off debts comes out of that. And also ensuring that we have money still left over to be able to grow and to help team members understand that in a very practical way with their practice. So they look at the numbers, they evaluate it. And so many offices, I feel, get really scared to share the numbers with their practice. And what I will tell you is when teams actually understand the fundamentals of a business, they can actually help grow your business more than they can without knowing the information. So I am a huge advocate for teams knowing and for profit sharing with them. These offices, it's just been interesting to watch. And so that's kind of where I wanted to take the podcast today, is how do you create more ownership within your team? And I think one of the biggest things is, number one, you've got to trust that that team actually wants to be a part of it and give them the opportunity. So we give these offices a ton of creativity. We say, this is your practice. How are you guys going to run it? And it's interesting. There are now 5 practices that I visit, and to watch and see them all have different things that they want to do, things that they don't want to do. Every practice runs a little bit differently, but we have core things. So there are core values that are amongst all of them. There are core ways that we do it. They are required to set up a focus for that next quarter or 6 months, and they need to have basically a plan in play. But really, I feel having teams help evolve and create their own goals really is a great way to create more ownership within your practice. So give them the guidelines, give them the core values so they know how to make decisions, and give them the autonomy and the authority to do so. So even financial decisions, these teams get to make, not 100%, but if they want to add on a new team member, we teach them how to look at the numbers. What can they afford? What do they need to produce in order to afford it? And then they are held accountable knowing that they made the decisions. So an office that I just left, they had a lower production in February, but that's because they all banded together. They all took vacations at the same time. So that way their production would be lower, but they'll be able to make it up the rest of the months, knowing full well the impact of those decisions. So these team members are starting to think a lot more like business owners. They are bought in. They were coming up with creative ideas, but they still have a flair of how they want their practice to run and operate. And so what I found is to really get these offices to take ownership. One, it's a slow burn. And so realizing that it's not just going to be overnight, but it will take some time, I think is one of the key factors to remember when you are trying to get your teams to have ownership. The second thing, like I mentioned earlier, is to have trust in your team. Trust that they will actually do better than even you will. I think oftentimes as leaders, we think we know the best and we feel like we've got to put our stamp of approval on everything. But I'm often shocked and amazed at how great teams do when given the trust from their leaders, when they really do believe that that leader is going to back them and trust them and not poo-poo their ideas. Some of the ideas that come up in these meetings, I'm sure the owners might cringe, but it's important to the team. And so having that empathy within the bounds of what's going to move the practice forward. We've also taught them, I think something that's been really paramount is we literally, every single meeting, we talk about Patrick Lenciani's 5 dysfunctions of a team and how to create a functional team. So what does that actually look like? And helping them have more trust and vulnerability with each other, saying the things that need to be said, having more healthy debate, having a true commitment when we leave a room and not gossiping and not backbiting and not bringing up issues or talking behind people's backs, and then having better peer-to-peer accountability as opposed to top leadership down accountability, and then winning. And what does winning actually look like? That's how you create ownership within a team, guys. You go over these principles, you teach them correct principles, and then let them truly govern themselves. So it's been very interesting. I also think having them take ownership of the goals they set. As a coach, going into offices and helping set up quarterly rocks and quarterly meetings and helping that with your teams, what I found is, as a coach, I'm heavily committed to the results. I need to be heavily committed to those results. That's what you guys pay us to do, is to come and deliver results. And so with offices, it's often very interesting when you actually have them take ownership of the goals that they set. And I ask at the end of the quarters and at the end of the time, how did you guys do? What went well? And where could we improve and make better for next time? That pulls from extreme ownership for sure, where you basically debrief at the end of every quarter. What did we do really, really well? And what were the areas that we could have done better? Where did we maybe miss the mark? And what did we do well that we're going to reinstill for this next quarter? Those things to me are vital, because then the team has to take ownership of the goals that they set for that last quarter. And again, there's no blaming, there's no backbiting, there's no pointing fingers. It literally is, did we win this quarter or did we not? And what is the reason for it? So I think when you have teams that really are given that trust, they're given the autonomy, they're told the parameters within which to build, and then they have to take ownership and accountability for those results, they can say, well, gosh, like this last quarter, we really fell off on our case acceptance, because they're tracking the measures. They need to track the measures. They need to know the numbers. Like when offices don't give their team members the information to make the decisions, how can you expect them to be accountable? If they're not tracking KPIs for new patients and case acceptance and what our production per hour is and what our collections ratio is, if we're not tracking that, and then we're not looking at the profitability or the P&L of the business, how is a team member supposed to make a wise decision if they're not even given the full picture? How are leaders supposed to make wise decisions if they're not given the full picture? Now, I will say that the P&L is not from QuickBooks that the team gets. Their information comes from mostly, it's a simplified version down for them, which I think is totally fine and totally rational and something that you should give them. But they have the tools within their possession. They have the numbers within their possession to, when we say, hey guys, if we haven't fixed this right now, why? If they don't have the tools to be able to dig down deep in and figure out the why, I feel we've set our teams up for failure. How are they supposed to make those strong decisions if they don't even have the information there for them? So this is where I'm such a huge advocate for doctors. Teach your team members to think like business owners and don't berate them when they aren't. thinking always as business owners. They never will. But you can get them much closer. You can have them take ownership of their practice and of the results of that practice. And it's been quite magical to watch these offices flourish. It's been magical to watch the team take ownership. It's been magical to watch certain team members transition out and other ones replace them that are bought into it. Today, for me to say, all right, guys, what do we need to focus on? And to have them have a true debate amongst team members of, is it for profitability we need to focus on? Is it case acceptance we need to focus on? Is it production we need to focus on? Is it community outreach we need to focus on? And to really, truly be able to teach them what to look for and then have them back up why they decided to choose that decision. They've got to back up all of their decisions with a reason. What KPI are we influencing? What is the reason? What is that going to push us forward on? And when you can get your team to start doing this, guys, this is how you create ownership within a team. Like I said, this has been many years in the making. It hasn't been something that we've done overnight. It has been something that has taken time and effort and consistency and diligence. I would say the next piece to it is the consistency and making sure that you actually have consistency within your practice, within your expectations of your team, within the requirements that you have. Are you consistently holding the meetings? Are you consistently giving them the numbers? Are you consistently reviewing the numbers? Is the team consistently tracking if we're on track or off track with the goals? So many little pieces to it. And people always say, well, my team doesn't take ownership. And I come back and I say, but have you done these things? Number one, have you given them trust? Have you given them the numbers to know? Do they have strong KPIs to be able to answer it? Are we consistently weekly answering if we're on track or off track of those goals to find out if things are moving in the right direction or not? And are we reviewing and taking accountability of the results and the goals that we set into place? And if we're not doing all of those pieces and constantly refining and improving it, I would say maybe that's where the ownership could be enhanced. Those would be some pieces to implement and to incorporate in your practice if you truly want your team to take ownership. I will promise you guys, if you will put these things into play, trust your team, believe in them, give them the resources, teach them how to look at this, your practices will flourish. Your teams will be more bought in. You will have less turnover. You will have higher morale. You will have other people thinking outside the box to solve problems. And you will have teams that love their practices, that love their jobs, that love their patients. And it doesn't mean that you can't be profitable, that you can't talk about the numbers. And today, it's not all about the numbers. It's not about pushing the production. All that is our measuring stick to let us know if what we're doing is working or not working. You have to be able to measure your results. You have to be able to measure the efforts you're putting in. And usually production, profitability, case acceptance tend to be the ones that drive those needles forward. Sometimes new patients can also help with that if we're not getting enough new patients. So you really need to be looking at those things with your team. Today I taught them, I said, guys, profitability is just like if you guys we make decisions based on how much money we've got. So if we're making our paycheck, the only way to make that money go further is to either one, get paid more, like to get a raise or to do something different, or two, to cut our expenses. Like those are the ways that we do it within our own budgeting. So you take it to where it becomes tangible and relatable for your team and help them understand. Did I worry if I said, oh, you got to get a raise? Yes. But at the same time, that means you've either got to produce more or we've got to cut expenses. It's the exact same thing in life. Also, we might have to say, no, we don't want to go buy a car right now because that's going to put us in financial debt. Maybe we don't want to do that expansion right now because that could put us in financial debt. The difference between a car and an expansion is the expansion is actually going to add profitability for us and production because we could produce in those. Unlike a car, unless we use that car for maybe being an Uber or a Lyft driver, that might just be an expense with no actual way to add more revenue to our bank account. It's just going to take more. But if there's a way to make it generate revenue for you, it's the same thing as like an expansion. So being able to relate the numbers of the business to team members of what they can connect to. So I always say if we have $100 and we're aiming for a 20% profit margin, how much needs to be remaining out of $100? The answer is 20. So then if we're only at, say, a 3% profit margin, that means out of $100, we only have $3 left over. Well, think about that. $3 out of 100. Can you really do a lot with $3 compared to 100? No. Could you do more with those $20? Yes. So it helps them understand how to make profitability make sense. So guys, if you want help with this, by all means, I love doing this with team. Our team, the Dental team, is phenomenal. Getting teams bought on board. Like I said, this has been 4 years in the making with many practices, changing it up a lot, and kudos to that leadership team. They're constantly thinking about their offices, constantly thinking about their team members, and thinking of how can they get them more bought in, more on track. And this is what they've concluded and come to. And I will say, watching them, these teams take ownership of their results. They take ownership of their practice. And what's cool is nothing's off the table. If they want to go on a team cruise, by all means, go research how much it's going to cost, research how much production will be lost, and research how much it'll cost to pay team members to go do that. Then we need to take that amount, put it into our goals, figure out how much production and collection we need to create, and then we can do it. So literally nothing is off the table, because now the team literally can think about, what do we need to do to make this a reality? They're bought into it. They create the goals. They create the systems. They create the buy-in to it. It's so incredible. So if you guys want to do that, by all means, reach out, hello@thedentalyteam.com, or head to the website, thedentalyteam.com, and book a call. I would love to chat with you and see if your office is at a good spot to implement this. You might need to get a few things in play before we can roll this out. That's totally normal. But I will say, help your team be bought into your practice. Give them the tools, give them the insight. And doctors always say, but Kiera, I'm so concerned. What if they think this or that? And I say, then they're not the right team member for you. Let them either rise up or rise out. Either way is perfect. Either way is correct. But what is incorrect is not even giving them an opportunity for ownership. Take baby steps. I didn't roll everything out all at once. It was really, all right, what do we want to create in our practice in the next 1 year, 3 years, 10 years? Give them the parameters, help them understand, do small little snippets and chunks for them. And this is how you're going to be able to get your team bought in. At the end of the day, I would rather have everybody rowing in the same direction than people rowing against each other. I'd rather have our communication increase. I'd rather have my team having more trust and openness with one another. That way we can actually grow together as opposed to growing against each other. And that's how I feel like it works. Get the team bought in, share the information with them, and know that your team is actively wanting to contribute and help grow the practice. Team members love helping offices grow. Team members love being involved. Team members at the end of the day really truly do want to be accountable. They want to have ownership. They want to grow. Give them the opportunity is my challenge to you guys. It's an invitation for you guys right now to bring your team in more than they've ever been brought in. Give them the ownership, and this is how. All right, guys, as always, thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time on the Dental Team Podcast. And that wraps it up for another episode of the Dental Team Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.